y'all, it's Alex and welcome back to my channel. So today we have day 9. Day 9's word is swing. Over on the left is day 8, which the prompt word was frail, and if you haven't checked this piece out, then go ahead and check it out in the top corner. Before we really get started with today's piece, I'm going to go through and cut down all of my sheets of paper. In order to save on costs, I usually buy 12 by 18 inch sheets of paper and then cut them in half. So I get double the amount of paper for the exact same price. Well, almost the exact same price. Today's pop of color is the Finetech Gold in, well, this Finetech Coppery Metallic. I'm not going to be using any of these 4 in this challenge because they're too sheer, but the top two, the middle one is today's, and we have the red one in a few days, and I'm very excited to get to that one. However, on to swing. There were obviously a couple of ways I could have taken this prompt, but the one that really got me the most excited for this prompt was the notion of swing dancing. I'm not much of a dancer. I will fully admit that. I don't dance very much. However, I've wanted to get more into posing people with more enthusiasm and with a little bit more complexity. A lot of my characters tend to just be like standing around in places, and I mean, that's a great place to start, but I want to start complicating things a little bit more. Not necessarily complicating things is probably not the right way to say that, but I'm going to start working a little bit more complex. So the original thumbnail was just these two people dancing together in the foreground, but as I was thinking about how I would make this a full piece, I thought it would be cute if we kind of see like a progression of different dance poses that these two go through. So up at the front, there's going to be like the full-size poses of these two witch gals who are dancing together, and as we go further back, there are going to be smaller and smaller poses of them together. Now, I didn't know exactly what I wanted these girls to look like going into this. A lot of my thumbnails are really just like circular headed stick figures, which I actually really like that style. Like, if I ever fall into an art block pit, I might use those to get me out, because they really helped me get through all of the thumbnails for Inktober. Something I wanted to kind of touch on now that that will become evident later on. When I was working on this piece, this was not my favorite piece. I do some things later on that are actually pretty stupid as far as the line art goes, but once I was done with this piece and I sat back and looked at it, I've drawn lesbian couples before, and like that's not like a big thing. However, this is the first time it's like really more than just holding hands. I didn't like this piece in the moment, but then it kind of became special to me. These two aren't supposed to be based off of me and my girlfriend in any certain terms, but it's definitely, this one is definitely closer to my heart than a lot of the other ones for this Inktober. So getting back to the actual piece, rather than me being all sappy over here, when I was initially thinking of how I was going to do this piece, I was 95% sure that swing dancing was primarily in the 40s. However, I found out that that swing dancing was at the height of its popularity anywhere from the 1920s to the 1940s. However, since I already had the 1940s in mind, I decided I was going to use 1940s fashion as like the main inspiration for their outfits. The ruffling in the skirts is not my best of work. However, this pose that I'm working on particularly right here is my favorite, particularly because of how I got their dresses to flow. And also, I think this one is my favorite pose in general. It's just so cute, and you can actually see it, like, it's like halfway in between movements almost. Because not every picture is going to be snapped at just the right time for them to be at the height of their movement. There's also there's like the in-between frames. Coloring of this piece, I originally was going to go in with a lighter tone for all of the dark spots and maybe have like some hints of people in the background, but I wanted to keep this one a little bit simpler, and I wanted it to be entirely focused on these two gals. Maybe there are other people in this dance hall, but they're so lost in each other that nothing else really matters. And I'm getting very sappy with this piece, so bear with me here. I think the names that I'm going to give to these characters, the girl with the bow in her hair, I think I decided that her name would be Margaret. I don't know why Barbara is really sticking out to me. I think you can blame Beetlejuice for that, but I think we're gonna go with Margaret and Barbara. Just some good classic old American names. I went through for most of the black background with a size 2 chisel nib Sakura pen, and I decided that it wasn't black enough, so I went over top of that with the Liquitex acrylic ink at the full darkest that I could get the carbon black to go. And I think it's actually a very, like, if I do have any more fully black backgrounds in the rest of Inktober, I'm going to do it that way because the pen really covers over it the first time and gets like the broad strokes of it. But then when you go over it with the ink, it really smooths out all of the pen texture. It does take a little bit more work, and I will admit that that's probably the thing that took me the most time on this piece. However, I think it was for the better, you know? While I was also working on coloring in these spotlights, part of me considered making a really watered down gold wash with that coppery gold fine tech, and kind of making it like people usually describe light as like golden in spotlights, or like, you know how there's God rays that come out of clouds and they seem kind of golden-ish usually, but I didn't want to wash over where I'd be later doing watercolor with more gold and then messing up edges. I could have just been a little bit more careful about where I would have washed it or just done it first, but I was a little hesitant. Now, one thing that I have some trouble with these fine tech colors, if you get them opaque enough, as like you can see that I got these pretty opaque. The problem is they cover over the line art really well. I tried going back over the line art with another fine liner, and that didn't work. So on these, it's not so much of a problem on the further back characters. I didn't really care very much about the line art for them, because as you go back you do lose some of the detail, so it makes a little bit of sense that you would lose the detail in the gold. However, for the pose of them up at the front, I wanted to make sure that the lines were visible. So I went in with a black Posca pen. However, I forgot that the only black Posca pen I have is, I think it's a 0.8 millimeter nib. It's a small nib relatively to the normal sized Posca pens. However, when using it for the two up at the front, it was way too thick. I did a good amount of Margaret Strass, and I was just looking at it as like, oh crap. Now I've done part of it, so now I have to finish it in this pen. So now I'm just going to have to destroy the entire front. And it looked weird having Margaret be done in all of these thick lines, and for Barbara to remain in thin lines. So I decided, screw it, I have to go in and do Barbara as well. We'll touch back on that later. For doing shading on all of the gold, I mixed some black watercolor in with the metallic gold, and it worked out surprisingly well. I didn't think that it would, just because when I was mixing the ink, which it was absolutely gorgeous to watch it, all the metallic particles flare up and then settle back down underneath of the watercolor. I figured that it would settle really weirdly, but it surprisingly didn't. So that was it's just enough shading, especially for the spotlights probably wouldn't be qualified as a soft light. However, I didn't really focus too hard on the shading for this one. I admit I was rushing a little bit, and also once I hit it with this Posca pen, I kind of didn't want to look at it for the rest of the night. I was really upset that I didn't think about the nib size before I actually went in, but I couldn't think of anything that would actually cover over the metallic paint, because you can see here on this tiny one, even going in with this 05 liner, you can see the metallic line art, or the metallic watercolor, through the line art. It gets better the further you go back, but I also went through and finished up all of the parts of the spotlight. I also went in and recolored in all of the pearls with my Molotow white pen, which works a whole lot better than my white Posca pen. It has such a smaller point to its nib. Like the Molotows have a point to their nib, whereas the Posca pens are really bullet nibbed, and the Molotows are a lot better suited to making these small little points as opposed to the Posca pen. I actually didn't touch this with any more Posca pens as soon as I got done with messing up that outline at the very front. So, messed up outline aside, I actually absolutely love this piece. I think all of the poses are adorable. Barbara's face in the second back, where Margaret's kind of got her one leg up and she's leaning back a little bit, I think it's just so adorable. And I kind of wish that it weren't metallic, so that way I'd be able to actually make prints of this, because I'd make prints of it just purely for the fact so I could have prints of it on my wall. Alrighty guys, I hope you guys enjoyed today. If you'd feel so inclined, hit that subscribe button and check me out on my other social media handles. Thanks, and I'll see y'all tomorrow.